Today on Life of Dad, we are talking about camping with your kids and battling addiction. Here on Life of Dad, we discuss two topics on each episode, one heavy and one light. And then at the end, somehow, it all ties together. Hey everyone, I'm Tommy Riles, founder of Life of Dad. I'm here with David Guest, co-founder of Life of Dad, and Josh Huber, friend of Life of Dad. And we are three dads every week talking about two different topics, one serious topic and one light topic. Today we're talking about addiction, and we're also talking about going camping with your kids. David Guest, I'm giving it to you first. Let's talk camping, man.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited. Well, as you guys know, I recently got married to my beautiful wife Mia. That was in March, and actually we're so happy that it all kind of went down right before the whole pandemic came upon us, and so we're very happy to get our wedding.
Oh, that's right. Yours was the last real outdoor together wedding. That was the last
Yeah,
one
it's
ever.
it's possible that it was the really last wedding ever to happen, on planet Earth, because literally
That's
the next day everything kind of came down upon us with the whole world shutting down. So I can't imagine that venue or any of those vendors or any of them have done anything since our wedding. And I have not, in fact.
There could have been a super spreader at your wedding as well. You hear about this could be the epicenter of this whole thing, not Wuhan.
There was a lot of hugs. There was a lot of bad dancing. That's very infectious. And
it's a typical wedding.
The electric slide. There's a lot of people bumping into each other, and
they were serving back.
Who knows what happened?
Weird,
That's right. Well,
you save some money on the catering, but
yeah. They just we had a buffet, and there's a lot of different types of meat. That's right. Yeah.
But anyway, that would never happen again. So crazy.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Stuff won't happen again. I don't know when there will be another buffet anywhere. It's so absurd.
It's true. No,
That's actually going to be one of the. That's going to be one of the good things to come out of this, by the way, guys. Is no more buffets. I think.
So anyway, one of the things, as my wife and I were falling in love, one thing that we really love to do together is camping. I grew up in St. Louis, and I did some camping, basically in high school, where I had a camping crew of friends, and we would get a tent, basically just get wasted and bounce around the woods and have fun. We also did a lot of canoeing and other things like that. There's a lot of great rivers around Missouri. And then I hadn't done it, forever, since the 90s. But I missed it. There was part of me that, liked to camp, but I just didn't know about it. It just wasn't in my world anymore. And Mia loves to camp. So that was one thing that we just started to do, right off the bat when we started dating, was going camping. We've gone to all types of incredible national forests around California, and we'd love to go to other ones all over. It's so fun. I love camping. It's beautiful. And actually, next month, if everything is open and we're allowed to do it, I'm going to take my two children with us camping for the first time. I've always wanted to take them with us, and I haven't yet. And we're going to go to camping in Lake Arrowhead, which is a mountain area pretty close to where we live in Los Angeles, and very excited for them to get a little bite of the camping bug.
I got a question for you. So I too am interested in taking the kids camping. My wife hates camping, almost to the point where she's it's getting a little annoying with she's it's become part of her personality how much she hates camping. And her parents never went camping. We used to go camping all the time. We did it. My dad would drag us out all over the place. And I didn't do it for years. I'm like you. And I had this long gap. But I kind of want to take the kids out and do this stuff. And my wife, when she doesn't like something, becomes very she'll put up a lot of resistance, but okay, fine, I'll be in on it, but I don't know how to do any of this. I'm just I'm just an Iceman. I have no idea how you people do this stuff. And I'm so it's been tough. But when you go camping, are we talking Lewis and Clark out in the woods, catching deer, or and fishing?
Absolutely, it's just pure. No, it's pure survivalism. We get a helicopter just to drop us randomly in the woods with nothing around, no
But
supplies.
so you're at a KOA. You have like tents, or do you do? Like,
Yeah, no,
what's your style?
No, this is like, I think the big focus for us with camping is definitely the food. We talked about the buffet, but it's all about like what we're gonna eat, and roast over the fire. Making a huge fire is like one of the best parts. And setting up the tent and all that stuff. So no, this is we rent a campsite and all, and we actually I just got a new car about a year ago, and I got a Jeep. Which is so cool because it has enough room that we don't have to rent any type of car to, lug our stuff up there or wherever we're going. And so we set up the tent. We're usually there for like 2 nights, and it's a fun weekend. It's usually like a Friday, Saturday, come home Sunday scenario, and go somewhere pretty. Just hang out.
No, I hear you. I like nature, and I like being out in there. And I think my kids, like, they haven't seen it enough, and like they're kind of young right now where it's already tough, like with a full house, like just having a roof over our head, trying to keep them from like whatever. But so you're kind of in between where it's like full on Lewis and Clark and full and then the other end of the spectrum, which is like having cable television with you, because you will see some they're not camping, so they brought like a refrigerator with them. Yeah,
that's right.
So I grew up camping. Throughout my childhood, that was the vacation we had. My parents never really had any money, and we went camping all the time, and so many amazing memories from camping.
This is in New Jersey, right, Tom?
In New Jersey, into Pennsylvania, we grew up in Jersey. But yeah.
But that's where you went camping around the East Coast. You guys would just drive to the...
Yeah.
Okay.
We never went like all the way west to like the Rockies or anything like that. But we did. There's so many beautiful state parks just on the in Pennsylvania and the Pocono Mountains, and there's so many incredible spots. And we started simple. We had tents, and then eventually my parents got a pop-up camper, those little things to tow, and you pop it up, and you got beds on both sides. And then eventually we got a trailer, like a full-size trailer to pull behind. And then eventually we got a motorhome. So we went through all the phases.
Wait, these are this is your family, or this is your? I thought you said your friends did this.
Growing up.
Okay. Your family. Okay. My parents. I thought you said your high school friends got a. I'm like, you guys went in on this?
No. So my parents and myself and my 3 sisters.
Cool.
So we did every step of the way, and then eventually we went back to tents. And so we did all of it, and it was amazing. And then when I met Lucy, my wife, we went camping too. Actually, one of the first times I hung out with her, she was throwing a big camping bash up near Santa Barbara, some campsite up there, which was awesome. And then Lucy and I went a little bit, after we got married. But then once kids came, that kind of stopped. And except for a couple like Boy Scout camping trips with my son, we haven't really done it in, I guess, 10 years or so, right? So, but here this summer, we just today, I'm gonna lay something on you guys. We looked at an Airstream. Airstream is the sickest, coolest trailer that you're gonna see out there, because for a couple things, we're looking at as we'll roll up to the campsite and just, everything will be set, and we're good, and it's beautiful and all that. But also, I'm looking at it as home construction, because we've always thought of putting like a second floor on our garage or extending the house and adding another bedroom or something. But instead, we can have this awesome Airstream in our backyard plugged to the electricity and running water and all that. It could become the guest house for my family that come and visit. It could be my office. It can be my podcast studio. So maybe a few months from now, I'll be recording solely from in there. So we're looking at it as, even though it's going to be rather expensive, we're going to buy used, but it's still going to be expensive. I don't know. We're looking at it as a life transforming thing, and I think we're going to use the heck out of it. So
that is the coolest thing I've ever heard.
I'm for it too. I feel like that was a practice conversation that you're going to have with Lucy here real soon, your wife. Like, I feel like that was you practicing. And if that's the case, I need you to bring it with more thunder but it could be she's all aboard. I don't know. Maybe it was her idea, but I'm getting the feeling that like, if she walked in right now, she'd be like, what?
Tom, have you
Airstream.
Have you like developed like a whole PowerPoint presentation around this, like with like little sound effects and stuff? And also,
Star wipe.
We can save money. Cha-ching!
Yeah.
Without all that construction.
I mean, you think of it in that way though, like saving on construction. You put a room on, like we did a bathroom renovation at one point. That was like $25,000. Like it was crazy. You know what I mean? And it's a nice bathroom. It's our master bathroom. But like if you want to add a bathroom to a house or add, anything with plumbing, like it's crazy expensive. So anyhow, my wife is super into it. She might be the same as me. So, and the kids are equally over the moon. My parents, it would be their guest house. So like, there's nothing. It's not amazing for everyone.
There's no downside to this. You're saying it's like this is.
I don't think so, except for paying for it, right? So that would be the downside.
Sounds like it's paying for itself, man. I got to say, like this is this.
Thank you.
I got to say, I think this is one of the better decisions that I've heard podcast side for a long time now. And this, when are we pulling the trigger on this?
Is there any way you can like Airbnb that thing and just have it pay for itself within a year?
Look at that. We got a little capitalist on our
There's a lot of them out there. So one of my buddies that does have an Airstream, and we talked to him the other day, and that only helped the case of us wanting to get one. When he travels and he's single, he only stays in Airstream Airbnbs.
Oh,
like man. He doesn't stay in people's houses. He'll only rent out Airstreams, at someone's house.
I'm suddenly very jealous of your friend here, whoever.
This is genius, yeah.
With his single life and going from Airstream to Airstream, like
when he goes camping, he's got like solar on his Airstream. So when he goes camping, guess if you're in a national forest,
glamping, right?
Forest,
yeah.
He just you could just park anywhere, I guess, in a state forest. So today's his birthday, actually. He's been in the Angeles National Mountains, and you could just pull to the side of anywhere and just stay there. Wow. And that's how he camps. So he doesn't go to a campground. There's no charge for it. He just pulls his Airstream wherever. It's a little bit crazier if you have kids to just be somewhere random, right? Yeah. But for us, and I forgot to mention, we have 2 dogs who are going to take a big trip with us. If our crew, which is 3 kids and then a 160-pound Saint Bernard.
Yeah, I was going to say that's not just a dog. Your Saint Bernard is like 2 dogs and a horse combined.
Yeah,
a dragon. Yeah, he's going to need his own Airstream, dude. That dog.
That's about right. Yeah. So anyhow, that's that. I don't want to talk about the Airstream too much, but we're psyched about the possibility.
That's really cool. Well, I think one thing about camping that's the challenge is just actually renting the campsite. That's the thing that I've learned about this whole thing is that it's the campsite fees are usually really cheap. They're like $20 or $29 or something like that. So, which is great because it's inexpensive. But the trick is actually just renting it. And you, as I've learned, you can go to the National Forest websites or, wherever you go to rent a campsite. They open up 6 months ahead of time, right? So for instance, the month we're in, if 6 months ahead of time, you have to know that is when you want to go camping, right? And so that's the trick with kids is just, it's not the money. It's not really anything. It's just like, you have to have a campsite rented. You can't just roll up, like you're single or kind of like we're in our 20s and just bouncing around and just hoping to find a campsite. You have to have it locked down. And that's the hard part. It's like, that means, if you want to go in August, you have to book it in, would that be February? Something like that. Right. So that's really tricky to know which weekend that's going to be and that it's going to work out that way.
Yeah, you got to plan really far in advance, man. That's well, if you got families, that's usually how it goes, though. Right?
Yeah. I feel like, I guess I have to ask my parents, but I feel like we never had an issue out east with something like that. But you're right. Out here, if you want to go to if you want to go to Yosemite, you got to book that thing 6 months, a year in advance. It's
weird. I mean, I wonder if it's because the internet that you can just sort of book it. I think one thing happens is that people just book it anyway. They're like, well, we might go. So they just book the campsite because it's only $30, right. And they're like, "Well, if we don't go, who cares? It was only $30." But the problem then is that they're all booked like instantly. And I'm sure, I know people are on it the day that it opens to book it on that day. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know this for sure, but I'm sure you can have a computer program or internet program just book it for you. So they're always booked. Like it's like within 6 months ahead of time. When you actually go, so I've had this experience now a couple times. When you actually go, more than half the campsites are empty. Like there's no one in them, but they've all been booked. And so, but when you have kids, you can't really like roll the dice like that. You can't just roll up and be like, oh, well, there'll probably be one available. Because what if there
We'll
isn't?
just wing it. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. You know.
We'll just wing it with kids. They'll sleep in the car for whatever, man.
That's right. We'll just drive home.
Yeah.
So our other topic today is addiction. And this can go in many different ways. But like I know I have a slightly addictive personality with certain things. Like, what's a good example?
Alcohol.
I don't know. With work and things. Yeah, there's one.
Just started out there.
That was too easy. It's not a problem, is it? Anyhow. With work and no, certainly with like I'll have a beer or two each night, and suddenly a couple months go by, you're like, wait, did I have a beer or two every night for 2 months? You know what I mean? So I definitely do with certain things, but like the reason I kind of chose this topic for today was, and the conversation going this way or not, but like I think we all probably have a friend or a family member or someone in our community that had a severe addiction problem, and even maybe a child, right? Someone that's 15, 17, 22, whatever. And I think us as parents, we try to figure out, we do everything we possibly can for our kids, but it seems that there's some things that are out of our control, right? Because I know some great parents whose kid was addicted to something really serious in high school, So for me, it's honestly one of my biggest fears as a parent. We're trying to do everything we can, to raise our kids in the right way. But, there's some things that are slightly out of our control. So I'll open it up to you guys.
Yeah, that's weird. As your kid, my kids are getting a little bit older. My son is only 11, but he's about to turn 12, and he's getting a little bit closer to that, getting ready for high school, becoming a teenager type age. And, when he was a little kid, it was always like, drugs are bad, drinking's bad, or this or that, just like a kid would see it. But I can also, I can see in him now that he's watching older movies, or he's talking to older kids, and drinking, drugs, addiction, partying, like temptations like that are going to be there. They've been there forever, and they'll be there for him, and they'll be for all the kids who are, little kids now as they grow up. And that's really frightening. You just have to know that they're going to go through the same life that we all did. We encountered all that stuff. I definitely did my share of drinking and a lot of other stuff too. And as I look back at it, I'm like, that's just the time that you are that age. And I don't know, you can't, as a parent, you can just guide, right? And keep your eyes open. You can't make anyone do anything. You have to know that they're going to make their own decisions, but also prepare them and let them know like the seriousness of it all.
It's funny you mentioned your son. How old's your son? 11, you said?
He's 11. Yeah, he's almost 12. Yeah.
I remember like that same age, like right before that, saying to my parents and like grandparents, like, no way, I'll never drink, I'll never smoke. And I ended up doing like all those things. And I remember like earnestly believing I will never touch that stuff. And then, yeah, it was this like slow, I don't know, maybe a beer here, like you just kind of morph into it. And then I'll be, and addiction, alcoholism, all that stuff runs on every single side of my families. Like, I mean, it's just everywhere. Big Irish Catholic families, you just couldn't get away with it. And yeah, a lot of it is, it's genetic, this stuff, a lot of it. Some of it is surroundings. Like if you grow up in a house where everybody and your kids see you getting bombed all the time, or, taking drugs, they'll, more often than not, they're going to do it too. And I learned it by watching UAD is really stupid when we were kids, but it's totally true. Like it really, it's tough too, because it's like I'll be around my kids and I notice it more and more where it's like, I don't feel comfortable like drinking around them because of that, where it's like, I don't necessarily like want to, I mean, they'll kid around and when they're drinking their Martinellis and be like, oh, we're drinking our wine. And I'm like, oh, that's funny. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't necessarily want them to be, everybody I know who isn't a big drinker, grew up in a house or isn't really into, grew up in a house that just didn't have that around very much. It's rare that you get somebody that didn't grow up around any drugs or alcohol that is a full-blown addict. Like, it's just, it really is rare. I mean, maybe you have the whole opiate thing now, which is a little bit different because it's like these people get hooked on a pain medication from after a surgery, and then they, you know, it turns out they have this addictive gene within them and they have to keep moving with it. But we should be worried, man. Like, we really should. Like, there's no other way around that, man. Like, we set the example, and that's a tough thing to, because I still like to drink beer and get bombed and have fun, and I don't want to. But at the same time, I don't want to like be like, well, I'll hide that from my kids or something. You know what I mean? Like, there's a weird game with that where it's like you want them to understand drugs and alcohol and all that stuff, but there's a fine line there.
How about you, Tommy Raz? What's your take on it all?
Yeah, well, first off, I have a question. Is the opioid crisis, I know you hear about it all the time, is that prescription? This is me just not having the knowledge. Is that prescription medicine? Is that what that's based on?
Yes.
Well, it starts off that way.
Pharmaceuticals, usually, yeah.
It starts off as pharmaceuticals, and they take like a synthetic form of like this opiate synthetic that's really powerful. And then what ends up happening is they're like, well, your pain should have stopped by now. So we're taking you off that medication, and they're hooked. So what do? They have to find that opiate on the street. So they'll
do whatever they can.
They'll go to heroin and then eventually onto fentanyl, and then sure enough, you're in the grave if you're on that side. So
my dad's brother, my uncle Vern, when I was 1 year old, I think, and he was definitely an alcoholic and drove all the time, and which resulted in a drunk driving crash when I was 1, right? So I don't have any recollection, but I do have recollection of when I was 4 or 5, he was still in a coma. So that was for that like 4 years.
Whoa.
He was in a hospital in a coma. Ooh. And I've got to talk to my dad more closely about it, but I don't know if the conversation, the conversation was happening, whether to pull the plug or not, or how that happened, if he was brain dead. I actually don't know the exact details right now, but all I know is that, it crushed my dad, of course, and his entire family and my mom. But that was when I was from age 1 till 5 when he was in a coma. And then he died after around that when I was 5-ish. Right. So I was kind of raised, not necessarily. Well, yes, my parents always, it's just funny. My dad calls every drug is considered dope to him. So opioid, maybe that's why I don't fully know what opioid is.
Which could also mean really cool. So
everything.
So maybe all drugs are dope to him.
Dope.
Dope.
But everything falls under dope. So from cocaine.
Does he say on the dope? They're on the dope?
Just dope.
Okay.
I heard he's on.
That's weird because I think our parents are at similar age, and my dad he doesn't do it all the time, but he will refer to like all drugs is just like dope. Like, well, he's on dope.
He does.
Yeah. Not exclusively, but like, he'll use dope, not like.
And then if I asked a follow-up question, like, no, specifically what it is, my dad, that's dope. So it never got more specific than that, but just dope is bad, right? Yeah. So that was what we knew. And drinking wasn't necessarily bad because my parents always enjoyed a cocktail, but I was raised from a young age, and if I can pass this on to my kids, I think I've done a pretty good job, that drinking and driving will kill you, because it did kill my uncle, right? So I guess there's been a couple times when I've had maybe 3 beers and driven in my life, never more than that. So I try to do 2 or 1 or 0. So you'll never find me. And that's why, like, if we're all going out somewhere, I'm either going to Uber home or I'm going to leave my car there and Uber home and pick up the car the next day or whatever.
With Uber, there's no excuse to be drinking and driving.
However, I do find one of my friends brought this up to me. I find that Uber makes you more of an alcoholic because you feel like you have to drink.
Yeah, but you're alive or not in jail. So whatever. That's right. It's like I'm okay with that.
Good point.
I'll be an alcoholic as long as I'm not dead or in jail. For man.
But what if the Uber ride was what if I was going? Where I live in LA. What if I was going to the other side of LA? It's like a $50 Uber ride. I Ubered to David's wedding, which made me feel like I need to really put down a lot of margaritas tonight so I can pay off.
It was an open bar. Yeah. I hope you did some damage.
And I did. Yeah. Last wedding in America.
That's true.
But anyhow, so drinking, driving bad. I've been raised that way, and of course I'll try to pass that on to my kids. It's to me that's one of the most important things. If they actually harm themselves, then I'll never feel worse.
Right. I mean, it's tricky. It's like it's so interesting and funny to be the age that we are now, and I'm 43 now, and I've lived a full life and grew up in a big Irish Catholic family like you, Josh, and drinking is just what people do, like it was just no question that, someone would be drinking. If you're together, that's just what everyone does all the time. It's just how would you not be? And all, kind of my whole experience in life going through all that, and I actually just stopped drinking about a year and a half ago, and I just don't anymore. And it wasn't any dramatic thing. It just didn't click with me anymore. And I just kind of stopped and just didn't. Once you stop, you kind of just don't really know why to start again. But it's just interesting. You can only, in a way, make that choice if you've gone through the whole experience of the whole thing, right? I think it's hard as parents. We want to tell our kids, do this or don't do this, or this is what you should do, because we care about them so much, and we want to impart our wisdom on them. But in the end, everyone has to just make their own choices about things, based on how they see it at that time in their life, and you have to, I partied my ass off, for so much of my life, that now it makes sense to me to not drink, because that's almost like the different thing, and that's what feels fresh to me. But you have to kind of go through that as a person, as a kid, as a teenager, an adult, to make that own choice. And so, oh man, it just makes you nervous though, because just one bad thing, one bad night, can just change your whole life, often for the worse. so yeah, it's just how you feel as a parent. You see it differently as a parent than you did when you were a kid.
I remember
and you want,
go ahead, Tom.
If your kids are making that decision, so be it, to drink young, which they probably will, because I feel like we all did. I mean, you hope that they trust you to call you instead of driving home themselves, right? So that's and it was a couple different steps to get there. It's like, I don't want you drinking at 17 or whatever, right? But if you do, call me. But the kid's probably going to want to hide it, right? So I don't know. It's a tricky line. Go ahead, Josh.
No, I was gonna say, I remember like my dad, he calls drugs dope, but he was a full blown hippie for a long time, and I remember having he sat me and my younger brother down and had really honest talks about drugs, and it wasn't like this is the reason you shouldn't take drugs kind of talk. We had already had that beat into our head by Daryl Program. He knew that. This was these are drugs you're going to run into. And this is what they do to you. And here's what happens if you take this drug with this drug, what can happen? And he had honest talks where if you take, speed and drink on it, you could have a heart attack. He's like, that's what happens. And he had really honest talks with us about the effects the drugs have on you, the ways that they can endanger you, how it can kill, and it wasn't don't do this. It was look, if you're going to do this, have the education to do it right. And it was weird because I was like, oh, I don't know if he meant to do that, but it had a weird effect where it was oh, this just sounds like more trouble than it's worth kind of thing. And then I would see these drugs throughout college and stuff like that. And then sure enough, like somebody would get sick and I'd be like, oh, well, I know from talking to my dad, who was like a full blown hippie, that like, you can't do that. Like you will get sick and you could die from doing that. And I had tons of friends who died from drinking, and, not tons, but a lot.
Yeah,
more
it's
than
weird,
I should have.
being grown like we are, and people who have died or bad things have happened to them. And it's, it's like what you were saying, Tommy, it just makes you terrified that something like that would happen to your own kid, I remember I definitely drank and partied like crazy in college and beyond. But I don't know if you guys ever had this experience where you had to be the designated driver and you go to a party and everyone is just getting so drunk and you're not. And it's about the most craziest experience you can have because everyone is acting crazy and you can feel it hour by hour, everyone getting drunker and drunker, but you're not. Like, it's like you're like the one it's like you're the smartest man on the planet all of a sudden, and everyone is getting wasted and you're just looking at it through these like crazy fresh eyes. It almost seems like that was what you were experiencing, Josh, with all that.
Well, I worked in bars like all throughout college and afterwards. So it was like you would just see, I could tell how many drinks and what somebody was drinking by 2 years in. I could read it, just like the smell in their breath would give it away. Like, oh, you've been drinking Red Bull vodkas for like a day straight. Great. You're never getting out of here. I lived in the Midwest for a long time too. Before I grew up on the West Coast, and like you, one of the good things about the West Coast I've noticed is drinking culture isn't as prevalent. People just don't drink as much, especially like St. Louis, Chicago. I lived in Cincinnati for a while. These are hard drinking towns, and it's more than normal for like 18-year-olds to be drinking with their parents. That is not uncommon. And their whole thing is like, well, I'd rather them learn how to do it now than screw up and then have their first beer in college and flame out. That was kind of the mentality of it. It's just the Midwest has a lot more. Alcohol is just much more prevalent there because there's just less to do, I think. In like the winters, you're like, all right, we're just going to pack on pounds and drink beer. And
it's just deep in the culture there. I remember having friends visit me in St. Louis, and we'd go to the zoo and like everyone's drinking beer at the zoo. They'd be like, people drinking beer at the zoo? And you go to the botanical garden and people are drinking beers. So, like, people are drinking beer at the botanical garden? That's crazy. Like
the botanical garden. An excuse to drink beer outside for
sure. I've downed many beers at the botanical garden, but it's just deep. It's it's very cultural, and I think that's its own. I guess as parents, you're sort of making your own culture in your own home with your kids, and so kind of like what sounds like your dad did with you, Josh, and Tom, like the things you've been talking about, or the culture that you had from your own father, with what happened to him and his brother, and that that's kind of cool. We get to as dads, we get to make the culture how we want, with our wives, and hopefully make the culture that we like.
I'm gonna wake my kids up tomorrow with a beer bong. This is how it is now.
Just tell them we're going to the zoo. Let's go.
we're going camping. Yeah, that's it. We're going camping. Actually, going camping was like the last time I went camping, I got wasted. That's how long it was. Camping was the place to go get bombed.
Well, that brings it full circle for me, because I was telling you how I used to go camping as a high school student, but the whole point of going camping was we just got wasted. Like that was like the whole thing.
There's something weird about just getting like bombed in the middle of nowhere. It like brings out some animalistic side of you. I don't know, because you're like so free or something, but guaranteed somebody always got hurt. It like fell off a rock or something. And did something
all of a sudden you come to your senses and you realize you were staring at the fire for like 25 minutes straight. You're like, whoa, wait, what's going on? We got deep into that fire.
Who wants to piss on it now?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, Tom.
So my son. So yeah, for I guess full circle for me. So a few camping trips we've taken with Cub Scouts with my son. They're very clear with Scouts. They don't want, and it makes sense completely. parents drinking
Oh,
on a
what?
Cub Scout
Come on.
camping trip, right? So there's
Cub Scouts.
so there's no beer allowed. There's no beer. There's no drinks allowed, at least openly, right? And I remember on one of the trips, I brought 3 beers, and I was like hiding it. And then I was just like, what am I doing? 40, I'm hiding beer on a Cub Scout
And only 3? What are you, like a freshman in high school? Is that going to have any?
Another guy.
Oh, you gave one to. Okay.
I gave one to another guy, so I had 2 left. So it was just like, what am I doing? I'm sneaking this around in a whatever, like canteen or whatever I put it in, right? And then but it was right after that I stopped, for a good probably 8 months. I didn't drink on any weeknights, just because that felt right to me at the time. And it was 2 years. So what you said earlier, Dave, like once you stop, and even though I only stopped during the week, I felt great on every weeknight, and I felt great on weekend nights when I was having a few drinks too. But like sometimes it's hard to get past that hump. But once you do, it's no big deal,
Yeah, I agree.
But luckily, I guess I don't have an addiction,
No, definitely. I mean, no, I don't think you do, Tom. Even though you're drinking beer out of a canteen on your child's
I don't know. The 3 beer story to the Cub Scout might be a story at an AA meeting a little later on.
That's right.
Your rock bottom moment, and they'll be like, "That's your rock bottom." Okay.
It's hey, God, I didn't bring.
When I gave one away to the other dad, I realized I only had 2 left.
That must have hurt giving that beer away to that dad, man. You're like, oh, that's one of my 3. Jesus.
Tom, if you find that you have to give up your Airstream because of your 3 beer drinking problem, that's the time to reconsider your life. Then only once the Airstream is gone, that's when you rethink.
Right. I see Josh coming in and trying to buy it off of you. That's your lowest moment.
Oh yeah, I'll sneak in there.
Yeah.
I know things are tough right now. How about I just buy this from you and help you out? Yeah.
You show it to your wife, Josh, and she'll want to go camping real fast.
No, that's what I was going to say. That'd be the way to sell her on it, because then she could just, have a. I mean, I'm all for it too, man. Like that Airstream looks awesome. I'm online looking at these right now, and if I had a backyard to put it in, I'd have it up for sure.
You would have your writing office right there.
Oh, right, dude, it'd be the best. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm jealous, man.
And they have these 2, like they're called forever fans or something like that. So apparently you rarely need to run the air conditioning because these fans in there are so good, like ceiling fans. Anyhow, I've said enough.
Sounds amazing.
Camping, addiction.
I could talk to this all day. Yeah.
Well, fellas, thank you as always. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to Life of Dad. Please check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Life of Dad, and of course at lifeofdad.com. And we want more people to listen to the show, so please leave a rating or a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for listening. Go Fatherhood.